All right, everyone stay where you are. This is a nice compliance check. Sir, we've received information this business may be operating in violation of federal regulations.
On what grounds?
You don't need to worry about that right now. I need you to step aside and identify yourself.
I'm the owner, and I'd like to see your warrant.
This isn't optional, sir.
Then neither is my question.
The smokehouse on Porter Avenue was packed when it happened. Tuesday lunch rush, 12:37 p.m. The kind of crowded service where tables turned every 45 minutes, and the smell of slow-smoked brisket and hickory-grilled ribs filled every corner of the dining room. Lieutenant Miller Kincaid had been working the floor, greeting regulars, checking on new customers, making sure the family restaurant his grandfather had founded 60 years ago maintained the standards that had made it a local institution. Still in his business attire from that morning's county commission meeting, dress shirt, slacks, tie loosened after 3 hours of budget hearings. His police credentials were in his office upstairs, his commissioner ID in his briefcase by the host stand. He was carrying a tray of sweet tea refills to table 7 when 3 ICE agents burst through the front entrance like they were executing a raid on a cartel safe house. Their body cameras were rolling, recording what would become the most expensive restaurant inspection in American history. Before we dive into this incredible story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. And if you haven't already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button because, trust me, you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Agent Brooks Arrington led the entry. His partners, Agents Thorne and Gable, flanking wide like they were corralling livestock, moving with tactical precision through a dining room full of families eating barbecue. Kincaid saw them coming, read the tactical spacing, the hands hovering near duty belts, read the body language of men who'd already decided everyone in this restaurant was a problem. His cop brain, honed through 23 years on the force and 6 years as an elected official, cataloged it all in the second it took them to spread through the dining room. Federal agents, immigration and customs enforcement patches visible on their tactical vests, looking at him and his staff like they were prey instead of citizens operating a legal business. Looking at his customers, families, business people, regulars who'd been coming here for decades, like they were suspects to be processed. He knew where this was going before Arrington opened his mouth. He'd heard the stories about ICE raids at restaurants, read the reports about agents storming businesses without warrants and demanding papers from everyone with brown skin. And he'd voted against policies that enabled exactly this kind of enforcement, sponsored resolutions protecting immigrant communities, used his platform as commissioner to speak out against profiling. He just never imagined it would happen in his own restaurant. To his own staff, with him standing there holding a tray of sweet tea like a waiter instead of the police lieutenant and county commissioner who owned the building. Immigration and customs enforcement. Everyone stays where they are. This is a workplace enforcement operation. Arrington's voice carried across the suddenly silent dining room. Customers froze mid-bite. Staff members stopped mid-service. The comfortable hum of a successful lunch rush died into terrified silence. And Lieutenant Miller Kincaid, 23-year police veteran and elected county commissioner, set down his tray of sweet tea and prepared to experience the justice system from the side he'd spent his entire career trying to protect people from. The most expensive restaurant inspection in American history was about to cost the federal government $19.2 million. And it hadn't even occurred to Agent Brooks Arrington that raiding a restaurant owned by a police lieutenant and county commissioner might be a catastrophic mistake that would destroy careers and change federal enforcement policy forever. The smokehouse on Porter Avenue had been a fixture in the community for 60 years. Miller Kincaid's grandfather had opened it in 1964 with a smoker he'd built himself, 3 tables, and a dream of serving the best barbecue in the county. By 2024, it had grown into a local institution, 30 tables, a catering operation, and a reputation that brought people from 3 counties away for the slow-smoked brisket and hickory-grilled ribs that had won regional awards. Tuesday lunch rush at 12:37 p.m. was controlled chaos in the best way. Every table occupied, a waiting list at the host stand, the kitchen churning out orders with the practiced efficiency of a well-trained team. The dining room smelled like heaven. Hickory smoke, caramelized sauce, fresh-baked cornbread, sweet tea brewing in industrial dispensers. Lieutenant Miller Kincaid moved through the crowd with the ease of someone who'd grown up in this building. 23 years as a Metro PD officer, 6 years as county commissioner for District 3, but he still worked the floor during lunch rush when his schedule allowed. Today, he'd come straight from a budget hearing at county admin. She's still in his business attire, dress shirt, slacks, tie now loosened and rolled up sleeves, helping his staff handle the crowd. He was carrying refills to table 7, a regular family who came every Tuesday, when the front doors burst open with enough force that every head in the dining room turned. 3 men in tactical vests, ice patches visible, entering like they were executing a raid on a criminal enterprise instead of walking into a family restaurant during lunch service. Agent Brooks Arrington led the entry, his partners Thorne and Gable spreading wide to cover the room. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Nobody moves. Everyone stays exactly where you are. The dining room froze. Forks stopped midair. Conversations died. Some children stared with wide eyes at the federal agents who'd just turned their lunch into something from a television raid. Kincaid's cop brain immediately cataloged the scene. 3 agents, tactical formation, body cameras recording, hands near duty belts. Not a random inspection, a planned raid, targeting his restaurant, his staff, his customers. This is a workplace enforcement operation. We need to see identification from all employees. Everyone else remains seated. Behind the host stand, Kincaid's general manager Maria Torres, who'd worked here for 15 years, who had a daughter in college and a son in the Marines, looked terrified. In the kitchen, visible through the service window, his line cooks had frozen mid-prep, their faces showing the kind of fear that came from understanding exactly what ICE raids meant for people who looked like them, regardless of their actual immigration status. And in the middle of his dining room, surrounded by customers who'd come for barbecue and sweet tea, Lieutenant Miller Kincaid set down his tray and prepared to defend his business, his staff, and the constitutional rights he'd sworn to uphold. The most expensive lunch service in American history had just begun. Kincaid's hands stayed visible, positioned where the agents could see them despite every instinct that screamed at him to reach for his phone and call his attorney, his precinct captain, the county administrator who'd just been in a meeting with him 2 hours ago. 23 years of police experience had taught him how tactical teams operated, how raids could escalate, how compliance, even when you knew you'd done nothing wrong, was the safest path through an encounter with armed federal agents. But this wasn't a legitimate raid. This was profiling with badges. Arrington moved through the dining room like he owned it, his tactical positioning putting him in the center with clear sight lines to every corner. Thorne positioned himself near the kitchen entrance, cutting off that direction. Gable moved to block the emergency exit by the bathrooms, a perfect triangle formation that controlled the entire space and eliminated escape routes. It was textbook high-risk entry tactics. The same formation Kincaid had used hundreds of times during his police career when serving felony warrants, when apprehending dangerous suspects, when the situation required maximum control and officer safety. And they were using it on a family restaurant full of customers eating barbecue. Everyone with this establishment, kitchen staff, servers, bussers, management, line up against that wall, now! Arrington's voice carried that bureaucratic authority that brooked no argument. Customers remained seated. Do not interfere. Maria approached from the host stand, her hands raised, her voice shaking. Please, we're a legal business. We have all our documentation. Against the wall. Everyone who works here. No exceptions. In the kitchen, Kincaid could see his line cooks exchanging terrified glances. Carlos, who'd worked the smoker for 8 years. Jesse, the prep cook who was putting himself through culinary school. Tamara, the pastry chef who made the peach cobbler that people drove an hour to order. They were being treated like criminals in the restaurant where they'd built their livelihoods. Around the dining room, customers sat frozen. Some had phones out. Good, Kincaid thought. Document everything. Others looked uncomfortable, uncertain whether to stay or leave, torn between finishing their lunch and witnessing what was clearly federal overreach. Near table 12, a man in a business suit, Kincaid would later learn, his name was Foster Reed. An attorney with the ACLU, who'd stopped for lunch between depositions, had his phone raised, recording with the steady hands of someone who understood exactly how important documentation would be. Kincaid stepped forward, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. Officers, I'm Lieutenant Miller Kincaid, Metro Police Department. I'm also the County Commissioner for District 3. This is my restaurant. My family has owned this building for 60 years. I need you to explain the legal basis for this operation. Arrington's eyes flicked to him, assessing, seeing a black man in a dress shirt holding a tray of tea, not a cop or a commissioner, just another suspect to be processed. Sir, step back and let us conduct our operation. This is my business. I have every right to ask about your authority to be here. Do you have a warrant? What's the reasonable suspicion justifying this raid? This is a workplace enforcement action. We don't need your permission. Kincaid's cop brain cataloged the violation even as his commissioner brain started building the legal case. No warrant. No specific probable cause. Just federal agents storming a private business during lunch rush. I'm demanding papers from everyone who looked like they might be immigrants. I want to see your supervisor. I want to see your authorization for this operation. And I want every badge number and name before you detain anyone in my establishment. Arrington stepped closer, using his physical presence for intimidation. In Kincaid's own restaurant. In front of his staff and customers. Sir, final warning. Step back, or you'll be detained for interfering with a federal operation. Chapter 3. I'm not interfering, Agent Arrington. Kincaid read the name off the tactical vest, making sure every camera in the room caught it. I'm asserting my rights as the business owner and as an elected official. I'm Lieutenant Miller Kincaid, Metro PD badge 7142. I'm also County Commissioner for District 3. I helped write the business codes for this county. And I know exactly what authority you do and don't have. Arrington's expression didn't change, didn't soften with recognition or professional courtesy. Everyone's got a title when we conduct operations. Step against that wall with your employees. The words hit like a slap. Kincaid had been a cop for 23 years, a county commissioner for 6. He'd testified in court hundreds of times, presided over zoning hearings, cast votes on million-dollar budgets. And this federal agent was treating him like an undocumented kitchen worker whose claims meant nothing. My credentials are in my office upstairs. My county commissioner ID is in my briefcase at the host stand. Let me retrieve them, and this can be resolved in 60 seconds. Don't move. Everyone stays where they are until we verify status. I'm giving you my badge number. Call Metro PD. Call county administration. Call the county executive's office. I was in a budget meeting with him 2 hours ago. Any of those calls will verify my identity immediately. Thorne, positioned near the kitchen, spoke up. Sir, if you're really a commissioner, you'll have documentation beyond verbal claims. Produce proof of citizenship. Now. The demand hung in the air. Proof of citizenship from a county commissioner in his own restaurant. Around the dining room, customers murmured. Someone said loudly enough to be heard, "That's Commissioner Kincaid. He was just on the news last week talking about the county budget." Kincaid reached slowly for his wallet, movements deliberate and visible. My driver's license is right here. Arizona, current and valid. I was born at County General Hospital 51 years ago. See, I'm a natural-born United States citizen. He extracted his license, held it out. Arrington took it, examined it, like he was checking for forgery. This doesn't prove legal status. It's a state-issued driver's license. I'm a police lieutenant. I'm a county commissioner. I own this building and the property it sits on. My family has been in this county since before the current charter was signed. What more do you need? Birth certificate, passport, naturalization papers. I don't carry my birth certificate when working in my restaurant, Agent Arrington, and I don't need naturalization papers because I was born here, Phoenix, Arizona, United States of America. Kincaid pulled out his Metro PD union card, his business license for the restaurant, a business card reading Commissioner Miller Kincaid, District 3. He held them all up for the cameras, for the witnesses, for the record that was being created. This is my police union card. This is my business license for this restaurant, issued by the county I serve. This is my commissioner business card. Call any number on any of these cards, and someone will verify my identity in under 2 minutes. Arrington pocketed the license without looking at the other cards. We'll verify everything once we complete our sweep. Right now, you're interfering with a federal operation. Last warning, step against that wall or be detained. Around the dining room, phones were out now, multiple angles recording. Foster Reed had moved closer, his attorney instincts clearly recognizing a constitutional violation in progress. Kincaid looked directly at Arrington's body camera. For the record, I'm Lieutenant Miller Kincaid, Metro Police Badge 7142, County Commissioner District 3. I'm being ordered against a wall in my own restaurant by federal agents who refuse to verify my credentials. This is unlawful detention in a private business without a warrant. If this moment is stirring something in you, stay with us. Subscribe. so you don't miss how this story unfolds. Agent Arrington, Kincaid's voice carried across the silent dining room, clear and deliberate for every recording device, every witness phone, every body camera. I'm going to explain this once as both a law enforcement officer and as an elected official who writes the laws you claim to enforce. The Fourth Amendment protects all persons from unreasonable searches and seizures. This extends to businesses. So you're conducting a warrantless raid of a private establishment without probable cause. That's unconstitutional. Arrington stepped closer, using his tactical presence to intimidate. In Kincaid's restaurant, in front of Kincaid's customers. Sir, this is your final warning. Furthermore, Kincaid continued, not backing down despite 3 federal agents in tactical vests surrounding him in his own business, under Illinois versus Cabales and subsequent precedent, workplace raids require either consent, a warrant, or exigent circumstances. You have none of those. You entered my restaurant, disrupted my business, terrified my staff and customers, and you're demanding papers without any articulable suspicion beyond racial profiling. The watching customers murmured agreement. And someone, an elderly white man at table 4, called out, "That is Commissioner Kincaid. I voted for him. He was on TV last week. What are you people doing?" Foster Reed, still recording from table 12, added in his attorney's voice, "This is unlawful entry. I'm witnessing a Fourth Amendment violation. This establishment has constitutional protection against warrantless searches." "Everyone stay seated," Gable barked, his hand moving toward his duty belt. Kincaid kept his focus on Arrington's body camera. "I'm invoking my Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable search and seizure. I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment rights. I do not consent to this search. I do not consent to any detention of myself or my employees. I am clearly articulating for your body cameras and these civilian witnesses that I am a United States citizen, a police lieutenant, a county commissioner, and I'm being illegally detained in my own business. You're obstructing a federal operation. I'm asserting constitutional rights. Every law enforcement officer in this country knows the difference. You're choosing to conflate them because you've already decided everyone in this restaurant with brown skin must be illegal, regardless of their actual status." Thorne moved in from the kitchen side, handcuffs visible. "Sir, you're being detained for interfering with federal immigration enforcement." "I'm not interfering. I'm standing in my own restaurant explaining why your operation is unconstitutional." "That's not interference. That's exercising my First Amendment right to speech and my Fourth Amendment protection against unlawful searches." Maria, still standing near the host stand, she found her voice despite her fear. "Commissioner Kincaid is right. You can't just come in here without a warrant. We're a legal business. We have all our documentation." "Ma'am, step back." "I'm not stepping back. This is wrong. He's the owner. He's a county commissioner. You're treating him like a criminal in his own place." Around the dining room, more customers were speaking up now, the initial shock giving way to recognition and outrage. These were regulars, people from the community, voters who knew exactly who Miller Kincaid was and what was happening to him. "I'm calling the county executive," someone announced, phone to their ear. "I'm calling the police," another voice added. "I'm already recording this for the news," Foster Reed declared. "Sure, this is going viral in about 30 seconds. Arrington's face flushed with anger or embarrassment, or the dawning realization that this wasn't going the way he'd planned. "Everyone in this restaurant needs to—" Kincaid interrupted, his voice still calm but edged with steel. "Everyone in this restaurant needs to remember they're witnessing federal agents violate the Fourth Amendment. Document everything. Remember what you're seeing, because this raid just became evidence in a federal lawsuit." Arrington reached for his handcuffs. "Turn around, hands behind your back. You're under arrest for obstruction." The handcuffs closed around Kincaid's wrists with a metallic click that echoed through the stunned silence of the dining room. Too tight. Deliberately so. The steel biting into skin with pressure that had nothing to do with officer safety, and everything to do with punishing someone who dared to assert their rights in front of witnesses. "I'm not resisting," Kincaid announced clearly, his voice carrying to every corner of the restaurant, to every phone, every camera, every horrified witness. "I'm not fighting. I'm being arrested in my own business for asserting constitutional rights." Thorne grabbed his right arm, Gable his left. They tried to walk him toward the exit, but Kincaid let every muscle go slack. Dead weight. All 190 pounds of him became a burden they had to drag across the restaurant floor his grandfather had built. Move! Walk! I'm being unlawfully arrested in my own restaurant. I'm not going to assist in my own constitutional violation. You want to detain a county commissioner and police lieutenant? You're going to have to physically carry me in front of all these witnesses. It was a technique he'd seen in civil rights footage, in protest videos, in training materials. He'd arrested people who'd used this exact tactic. Never imagined he'd use it himself in his own business, being detained by federal agents who'd refused to verify his credentials. They dragged him past the tables, past the horrified customers, past his staff who were crying now. Maria with her hand over her mouth, Carlos looking like he wanted to intervene but knowing that would make things worse. Kincaid's dress shoes scraped across the floor, his tie askew, his dignity being stripped away in front of the community he'd served for decades. See, I'm being dragged through my own restaurant at 12:52 p.m., he narrated for the recordings. My shoulder is being wrenched. The handcuffs are cutting circulation. This is excessive force applied to a non-resistant business owner who has committed no crime. You're making this harder. You made this hard the moment you raided my restaurant without a warrant and refused to verify my identity. I'm refusing to make it easy. Foster Reed was following with his phone, recording everything. This is unlawful detention. I'm an attorney. I'm witnessing excessive force against a county commissioner. This is going to federal court. Sir, step back or what? You'll arrest me too for witnessing your constitutional violations? Go ahead, add it to the lawsuit. They reached the kitchen, dragging Kincaid through the space where his staff had been preparing the lunch service that had been so violently interrupted. Past the smoker his grandfather had built by hand, past the prep stations where his cooks had spent years perfecting recipes, past the office upstairs where his credentials sat in a desk drawer, ignored because these agents had already decided who he was based on the color of his skin. Watch your head. Arrington shoved him toward the back exit. Not gentle, not caring about the shoulder already strained. Kincaid couldn't catch himself with his hands cuffed, stumbled against the doorframe hard enough to split his lip against the metal. Blood, warm and wet in his mouth. More evidence of excessive force. He looked back at his staff, at his customers. See, at his restaurant, the family business his grandfather had built during segregation, that his father had expanded during the civil rights era, that he'd modernized while serving as both a cop and a commissioner. All of it now violated by federal agents who'd seen a successful black man and assumed he must be employing illegal immigrants, must be someone whose papers needed checking. Through the doorway, he could see their white transport van, the cage where they'd put him, where they'd transport him like a criminal, where they'd process him through their system despite his badge, his office, his years of public service. It's 12:54 p.m., Kincaid said, looking directly at Arrington's body camera. I'm Lieutenant Miller Kincaid, Metro PD badge 7142, County Commissioner District 3. I'm being arrested in my own restaurant. Assaulted during detention, transported against my will. I want every badge number, every name, every frame preserved for the federal lawsuit that will cost you everything. The door slammed behind him, cutting him off from the business his family had built, the community he'd served, the life he'd spent decades creating. All of it reduced to nothing by 3 agents who'd profiled him and refused to admit their mistake. The federal detention facility holding cell was 10 feet by 10 feet of institutional architecture designed to strip away dignity and manufacture compliance. Concrete block walls painted institutional beige, a metal bench bolted to the floor, a toilet in the corner with no privacy. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead with a frequency engineered to induce headaches. Worse, the air smelled like industrial cleaner failing to mask decades of fear and bureaucratic indifference. This was the machinery, the processing center where constitutional rights disappeared into paperwork, where county commissioners became case numbers and restaurant owners became subjects requiring verification. They'd removed his handcuffs during intake, photographed him from multiple angles like he was evidence instead of an elected official, fingerprinted him with mechanical efficiency. Nobody made eye contact. Nobody answered his questions about calling his attorney or notifying county administration. He was a unit moving through their system. Personal effects. The intake officer, Martinez, his nameplate read, gestured to a plastic bin. Phone, wallet, watch, belt. To tie. Kincaid handed over his smartphone showing 47 missed calls, probably county admin wondering where he was, Metro PD asking questions. his restaurant manager Maria panicking, his wallet with the credentials these agents had dismissed, his watch, inherited from his father who'd worn it while building the restaurant's reputation, his belt and tie stripped away like he was a common criminal. I want to make a phone call. I'm a county commissioner. I'm entitled, after processing. I'm an elected official. I have a county commission meeting tomorrow. I have a restaurant with employees who depend on me. You're creating a governmental crisis by detaining a sitting commissioner. Martinez's expression didn't flicker, just following procedures, just doing his job. I had the same excuse that had echoed through every bureaucracy that had participated in injustice throughout history. Cell 4. The door buzzed open electronically. The space smelled like industrial cleaner and institutional despair. Kincaid stepped inside, heard the lock engage with a finality that made his chest tight, despite all his training. He sat on the metal bench, cold despite the afternoon heat outside, and let the reality settle. He was in custody. A 23-year police veteran, a 6-year county commissioner, a successful business owner, detained like a criminal for existing in his own restaurant. The irony was crushing. How many people had he arrested in 23 years? How many suspects had he processed, telling them it's procedure while they protested their innocence? How many times had he trusted the system to sort truth from lies, to release the innocent and charge the guilty? Now he was the one protesting, the one insisting on his identity, the one experiencing the gap between how justice was supposed to work and how it actually worked when you were black and presumed guilty regardless of your credentials. He thought about his restaurant, probably closed now, the lunch rush abandoned, his employees sent home terrified and traumatized. He thought about his county commission duties, the budget hearing he'd miss tomorrow, the constituents who depended on him. He thought about his grandfather, who'd built that restaurant with his own hands during a time when black business owners faced violence and discrimination for daring to succeed. The clock visible through his cell door window read 3:17 p.m. At over 2 hours in custody. County admin would be calling Metro PD by now. The county executive would be demanding answers. The media would be picking up the story. But he disappeared into federal processing, deliberately isolated from communication, deliberately denied his rights, just like thousands of others detained based on demographic profiles instead of facts. Kincaid pulled a pen from his sock. 23 years of police work had taught him where searches usually missed, and started writing on his palm. Times, badge numbers, names, every detail documented in his own hand. When this was over, the lawsuit would be devastating. 3 hours, he calculated. They'd keep him 3 hours before political pressure forced his release. He settled in to wait, to document, and to plan the legal battle that would cost them $19.2 million. See, Hollis Stallard had supervised federal detention operations for 12 years, long enough to recognize when a situation was about to explode into career-ending catastrophe. The call from the county executive's office at 3:52 p.m. triggered every alarm in his body. Hollis, where is County Commissioner Miller Kincaid? His office says he was arrested at his restaurant. His staff is terrified. And we have viral video of ICE agents dragging an elected official through his own business. Stallard's blood went cold. County Commissioner? Elected official? What are you? Find him, now, before this becomes a political nuclear event. He pulled up the afternoon's operation log. Workplace enforcement action, authorized by Agent Brooks Arrington, intelligence-based raid targeting suspected employment of undocumented workers. Vague language hiding what was probably profiling. One detention, business owner, verification pending, transported from Porter Avenue restaurant. Oh God, not just a restaurant owner, a county commissioner, a police lieutenant. He was running before conscious thought caught up. Down 3 flights, through security, into intake. Martinez looked up, immediately reading disaster in Stallard's expression. The subject from the restaurant. Where is he? Cell 4. Won't provide documentation beyond a driver's license. Claims he's a county commissioner and police lieutenant. Show me his intake photo. Now. Martinez pulled it up. Black male, early 50s, professional attire now disheveled, split lip-bleeding expression of controlled fury that somehow made him look more authoritative. And, unmistakably, County Commissioner Miller Kincaid, whose face Stallard had seen on local news, whose votes on county budgets affected federal-local cooperation. They'd arrested an elected official, a sitting county commissioner, a police lieutenant, in his own restaurant, in front of customers and employees, creating exactly the kind of political catastrophe that triggered investigations, lawsuits, and congressional hearings. Stallard accessed the evidence locker. Arizona driver's license. Metro PD credentials badge, 7142. County Commissioner ID business cards. Phone showing 89 missed calls from numbers labeled County Executive, Metro PD Captain, Restaurant Manager. He grabbed everything and ran to cell 4. Through the window, he could see Kincaid sitting calmly, writing on his palm, documenting. He opened the door. Kincaid looked up, unsurprised. Commissioner Kincaid, Lieutenant. I'm Supervisor Hollis Stallard. There's been a terrible mistake. I sincerely apologize for this inconvenience. Inconvenience? Kincaid stood slowly. You call raiding my restaurant, terrorizing my staff, arresting me in front of customers, and detaining an elected official for 3 hours an inconvenience? I understand you're upset. I'm a county commissioner who was dragged through his own business by federal agents who refused to verify credentials that were 15 feet away. I'm a police lieutenant who spent 3 hours in that cell because your agents decided everyone in a barbecue restaurant must be illegal. That's not an inconvenience. That's a constitutional violation that just became a political crisis. Stallard felt his career dissolving. We will immediately begin an internal review. You'll preserve evidence for my federal lawsuit. Every moment of my detention documented. Every agent's name and badge number. Every frame of body camera footage. Every second of that viral video. All of it preserved. Of course, we'll cooperate. I don't want cooperation. I want accountability. Those 3 agents violated my constitutional rights, disrupted my business, traumatized my employees, and humiliated me in front of my community. I'm suing them personally and your agency institutionally. And I'm using my platform as county commissioner to make sure every elected official in this state knows what happened. Kincaid walked past him, posture straight, despite 3 hours of detention. My personal effects. Transportation back to my restaurant. And every piece of documentation about this raid, I want warrant applications, intelligence reports, authorization memos, all of it, because there won't be any, and that absence of documentation is going to be Exhibit A in my lawsuit. We'll arrange everything. You'll cooperate with my attorney, Linnea Whitaker, civil rights litigation. She's going to destroy your agency's defense, and I'm going to use every bit of my political power to make sure this raid becomes a case study in federal overreach. Kincaid collected his belongings, checked his phone, 89 missed calls, frantic messages from staff and officials. The viral video already had 5 million views. He walked out with controlled fury, ready to use his position as both cop and commissioner to dismantle the system that had just shown him exactly how it treated people without his resources. Stallard watched him go and started updating his resume. By morning, this would be national news, and he needed distance from the catastrophe. The trial began 21 months later in federal district court. By the time attorney Linnea Whitaker finished her opening statement, the Department of Justice defense team looked like they wished they'd settled for the initial $15 million demand. Whitaker was 51, a civil rights specialist who'd dismantled qualified immunity defenses in landmark cases. She stood before the jury, 8 women, 4 men, diverse backgrounds, and delivered an opening that would be studied in law schools. Ladies and gentlemen, the County Commissioner Miller Kincaid was working in his restaurant. He's a 23-year police veteran. He's an elected official who writes county laws. And 3 ICE agents decided he looked illegal. Not because he'd committed a crime, not because they had evidence of employment violations, but because they saw a successful black man running a restaurant and assumed he must be hiring illegal workers. She clicked a remote. The monitors showed body camera footage from Agent Arrington's perspective. Timestamp, 12:37:22 p.m. Watch. You'll see the smokehouse during lunch rush. Families eating. Normal business operations. Now watch the agents enter. No warrant, no specific intelligence, just assumptions and badges. The footage showed the raid, the triangle formation, the escalation. Kincaid identifying himself repeatedly. Offering credentials, citing constitutional law while Arrington reached for handcuffs. All captured in the dining room full of horrified witnesses. 6 jurors were taking notes. Others watched with expressions of outrage. The civilian footage came next. Foster reads video from Table 12. Raw, unedited, showing a county commissioner being dragged through his own restaurant. Staff crying. Customers protesting. Blood on Kincaid's face when they shoved him out the door. 4 jurors were visibly upset. The defense tried damage control, protocols, intelligence about employment violations, brief detention, only 3 hours, and Kincaid's release without charges. Then Whitaker called Agent Arrington to the stand. Agent Arrington, you testified you had intelligence about employment violations. What specific intelligence? Reports of suspicious employment practices. Suspicious how? Be specific. Reports suggested possible undocumented workers. What specific facts suggested Commissioner Kincaid's restaurant employed undocumented workers? Silence. Commissioner Kincaid identified himself immediately. He offered credentials. He gave you his badge number. Did you verify any of that before arresting him? We intended to verify. You intended to verify after dragging him out of his own restaurant? After terrorizing his staff? After disrupting his business during lunch rush? We were following protocols. Show me the protocol for raiding restaurants without warrants. Show me the training that says ignore credentials from county commissioners. Show me anything justifying what you did. He couldn't, since the jury watched him fail to articulate anything beyond racial profiling. Deliberation, 12 hours. Verdict, unanimous. Constitutional violation. Civil rights deprivation. False arrest. Excessive force. Interference with business operations. Damages, $19.2 million. The courtroom erupted. Kincaid sat quietly, thinking about his staff who'd been traumatized, his customers who'd witnessed injustice, his community that deserved better. The settlement arrived 18 weeks later. $19.2 million, one of the largest civil rights judgments in federal court history. After legal fees, Kincaid had resources that exceeded most people's lifetime earnings. He reopened the smokehouse the next day, serving lunch to a packed dining room of supporters who'd waited months for this moment. But everything had changed. Agent Brooks Arrington resigned before formal discipline, his federal career over. Agents Thorne and Gable were reassigned to desk positions indefinitely. Supervisor Hollis Stallard took early retirement. The Department of Homeland Security announced sweeping reforms: no workplace raids without warrants, mandatory verification of business owner credentials before enforcement actions, supervisor approval for all restaurant operations, body camera preservation requirements, quarterly civil rights audits. The Kincaid case became the training example of catastrophic profiling. But Kincaid knew policy changes weren't enough. Real change required resources for people who couldn't fight back. He created the Small Business Civil Rights Initiative with $16 million of his settlement. So the nonprofit provided free legal representation to business owners targeted by warrantless raids. It trained immigrant communities on constitutional rights. It tracked enforcement patterns and brought lawsuits, relentlessly, against agencies that violated protections. First year, 523 clients represented, 387 cases won, $12.4 million in additional settlements, funding expansion. 12 attorneys grew to 34, 4 offices to 19, regional impact to national influence. Lieutenant Miller Kincaid stayed on the force and remained county commissioner, but used both positions differently. Every policy he sponsored, every vote he cast, he remembered cell 4 and 3 hours stolen for owning a restaurant while black. He became the commissioner who changed ICE, though he'd correct people. I didn't change ICE, I exposed them. Our real change comes from pressure, from consequences, from refusing to accept that successful black businesses can be raided without cause. 7 years after the raid, Commissioner Kincaid was county executive, using his position to pass comprehensive protections for small businesses. The smokehouse had expanded to 3 locations, all employing formerly detained individuals who struggled to find work. The raid video still circulated, footage of a county commissioner being dragged through his own restaurant. It became a symbol, a reminder that success didn't protect you from racism. On each anniversary, Kincaid hosted a community lunch at the smokehouse. Free barbecue for anyone who came, speeches about civil rights, voter registration drives. The dining room where it happened now had a plaque. On this site, Commissioner Miller Kincaid defended constitutional rights against federal overreach. His courage changed enforcement policy nationwide. Progress wasn't one dramatic verdict. It was making it possible for the next black business owner to operate without 3 agents deciding they looked illegal. That day hadn't fully arrived. But because of what happened in that restaurant, because of the $19.2 million judgment, because of the initiative and thousands of cases it supported, that day was closer than before. Commissioner, now county executive, Miller Kincaid had paid the price for systemic bias. He was making sure the system paid everything, one lawsuit, one protected business, one constitutional right at a time.